My name is Kevin McCracken. I'm the co-founder of a social enterprise that hires formerly incarcerated individuals in San Francisco. Working in social enterprise for 20 years and being a 22-year clean heroin addict, I've seen firsthand the devastation of the system of mass incarceration. It specifically affects marginalized communities, more specifically communities of color.
It was really traumatic.
David Luis Suave Gonzalez.
It was a situation where you put children to do things that they probably don't want to do to protect themselves.
Suave is a former juvenile lifer, now out on lifetime parole in the state of Pennsylvania. Suave was 17 years old when he was convicted.
Once you end up in that type of institution, you are thrown with people that are certified killers, rapers. Here you are, a 15, 16-year-old kid walking the same grounds and got to breathe the same air, behave the same way, which most of the time is violence.
The United States is the only country in the world that permits youth to be sentenced to life without parole. Sentencing children to die in prison is condemned by international law. Life without parole is also called death by incarceration.
You know, with this podcast, we'll give a platform to the people that's been forgotten in the penal system 40, 50 years.
My only son, when he was 18 with 3 months, got incarcerated. My baby boy getting ready to be 45. He's been incarcerated 27 years.
The trauma is systemic. It's a system that is viciously targeted at harming people.
Each week, we will share stories intended to shed light on institutions that harm marginalized communities, specifically communities of color.
If I want to travel, I got to ask for permission.
Yes.
If I want to buy a new home in Philadelphia, I got to ask for permission. If my parole officer feels like you get paid more than me, I don't want you working that job, then you don't work that job.
We will interview individuals currently incarcerated.
This call is subject to recording and monitoring.
I am all evidence-based. It's all about what is taking place, what has happened, what is the results, what are you doing. There's been a false narrative by people who don't want to be held accountable.
Those who have returned from incarceration.
Hello, my name is Robert Salim Holbrook. I'm the executive director of the Abolitionist Law Center. At the age of 16, I was arrested for being a lookout to a drug-related homicide in my neighborhood. My experience in the drug game was very quick. The consequences were fatal for an innocent person in my community.
Prosecutors, defense attorneys.
We know that prosecutors across the country use crime victims and prey on them and stir up emotions and feelings in order to do things like seek the death penalty.
Victims, policymakers, and community members working to bring about change.
I rely on the work of my colleagues who do a lot of the counting of the number of kids in facilities and then get involved in campaigns to change these laws, both for people under 18 and increasingly for people over 18 as well.
Brought to you by Crawlspace Media, Suave Gonzalez, and Kevin McCracken.
The United States Supreme Court ruled that it is unconstitutional to incarcerate a child for life. How is it possible that that same child is now being put on paper for life?
I think you make a really valid point, which is if we recognize that children are children, when we punish children for committing crimes, that we actually do it through a framework that's called the best interest of the child.
This is why I fight so hard, but I tell you, my son never had a chance from the door. My baby needs me because nobody's going to fight for him the way I'm going to fight for him.
There are victims involved in some of these cases. We're here to give them a voice. This is it, death by incarceration.
Coming in summer 2021, wherever you get your podcasts.